What does it look like to love someone you disagree with?
In a world where conflict over politics, theology, and personal preferences is rampant, even in the church, Loving Disagreement offers a better way.
This 4-week series at Sycamore Creek Church explores how the work of God's Spirit can guide us toward love in the midst of tension.
You'll discover how Spirit-led relationships can heal divisions
and create space for grace.
Hello, everyone. Tom Arthur here, pastor at Sycamore Creek Church, and welcome to Loving Disagreement, the conversations behind the book, a live Q&A with authors Matt Mikalatos and Khang. Although you may notice one of those authors is not with us, and we think she's okay, but we wonder if maybe the time zone kind of threw off the things today. We'll see. Maybe she'll join us here shortly. But I'm joined by Matt Mikalatos. Tonight's goal is to not just talk about what's in the book, which we've been doing a series on over the last, through the month of October, but explore what's between the lines, the tensions that are hard to write about, the topics that stretch us, the Spirit's call to something more than just civility in our disagreements. So let me introduce you to Matt. He is an author, a speaker, a podcaster with a passion for storytelling that bridges faith and everyday life. He's written a bunch of books, including a graphic novel, which I happen to have here with me, God With Us.
Nice.
Matt and my wife, Sarah, are both authors and writers, and my wife has everything. So I went in her office and said, "Do you have Matt Mikalatos' book?" And she's like, "Of course I do. Here it is." And she also told me, Matt, that not only does she have a copy in her office, but we have copies in our church,
Amazing
program. So great graphic novel. Let's see. You did the words for it. It was illustrated by somebody else. But you've also done a book called Praying with St. Nicholas, and you co-host with Kathy the Fascinating Podcast. What a great name for a podcast. I'm already fascinated.
I mean, it's a great name, but very hard to find, actually. Okay. You type in Fascinating Podcast and it brings up any podcast anyone's ever been interested in.
Oh, okay. That was a step you didn't take into account. But you co-host that with Kathy and several others. You spent over 2 decades in campus ministry with Crew, which was previously called Campus Crusade, but of course they needed to change their name because that was a rough name. in today's
Yep.
climate, and maybe every climate, but you lead conversation about theology, culture, and imagination. And you live in the Pacific Northwest with your wife, Krista, and your 3 daughters. And you're still trying to convince your giant rabbit, Bruce, that he's not a dog, which feels like there's a story behind that.
I mean, we do have a giant rabbit named Bruce. We got him during the pandemic. He's really more of a vegetarian cat than a dog.
Okay.
But yeah, he likes to come in. He watches TV with us in the evenings. In the winter months, he'll come and sit in your lap. In the summer, he doesn't have a lot of patience for that because he's hot.
If I had one animal pet, I've got like family members who are allergic to everything. I'm not a big pet person, but if I had a pet, it would be a bunny, be a rabbit.
Our family, we have people allergic to dogs and cats, and no one's allergic to the rabbit.
Okay. All right. Is
So,
it a free range
and you can
rabbit in
train
your
him.
house, or?
So, well, yeah, he comes into the house, but he lives in the backyard and he has a hutch that he sleeps in at night.
Okay.
And when it's time for bed, I go stand by the hutch and I call him and say it's bedtime, and he comes hopping over and puts himself to bed.
Anything you want to add to that introduction that I missed?
No. I mean, yeah, I've been in ministry for a lot of years. I'm a full-time writer now. I do a lot of work in Hollywood right now, which is a great place to talk about loving disagreement too. Just people from a lot of different backgrounds with a lot of different ideas, but all working together.
What do you do in
some really
Hollywood?
interesting ways. I'm a writer. Yeah, so I write TV and movies, and
Any we might
great.
know or be familiar with?
Probably not. I've got several things in development right now. I was a staff writer on a show called Going Home for a couple seasons, which is a show about hospice nurses. And I did a little family movie for Sony Affirm, which is Sony's faith and family group called, oh no, blanked on its name. That's bad. Yeah.
Is there a show or a movie that as a writer you find particularly compelling when it comes to the writing?
Oh, there's so many. I really love, if you haven't seen Lady Bird.
Okay. I haven't seen that,
but it's a beautiful movie about a teenage girl and her mother and her learning, discovering, is my mother's faith mine, and is our relationship healthy, and where am I going to college? It's really beautifully done movie. I just love that movie a lot.
So when you say that, it sounds like, I mean, this is sort of going off on a total tangent, but I'm doing this rites of passage thing with my sons, and we often watch movies about girls who are doing similar things and talk about that, and it raises a lot of interesting things. So maybe that'll be one of our movie nights.
It's a great one.
We've got
really
this cohort of dads
I mean,
and sons that do this together.
We could do hours about movies, I'm sure.
Okay.
But
that's not really what we're here about.
No,
but we are here to talk about disagreements. If you're just joining in, I see several of you have joined in. You can put a chat question in the comments, and I monitor them here. And you may be wondering, there's only one author here, Matt Mikalatos, and we're not quite sure where Kathy's at.
Yeah.
Maybe in the time change, something got mixed up. But Matt has checked in with her, and we're hoping that she'll join us here sometime soon. But we're going to go ahead and move forward. I do want to, I don't know, I'm trying to decide. Well, if she comes, I'll do her introduction at that point.
Okay. So, perfect.
Matt, let's do an icebreaker here. What's the weirdest or strangest disagreement you have been in lately?
It's a great question, Tom. What is so weird, and social media pushes us into some weird conversations and spaces that we probably wouldn't have face to face. But in the last couple of weeks, there's a guy who, for whatever reason, who I know, like we've met, we're not like good friends or anything, but he has suddenly decided that I have a certain point of view and something I'm trying to prove on a variety of topics in a really uncharitable way. And he's telling me what my motivations are in posting and doing different things, which is super unhealthy, right? But it's a really weird kind of surreal space to be in an argument with someone else about what my motivations are. It's been really baffling and strange. I keep going like, which it's kind of a type of gaslighting, right? Where he's saying, no, that's not your motivation, it's this other thing. But
Hmm.
because it makes you stop and go like, I'm like, I know that's not true. But it's weird to be arguing about yourself. So yeah, that's been weird.
Yeah, like
Um,
how can you even, what proof do you have? How can
you
you?
would think that I would immediately win the conversation, right? If it's a fight of some sort, that you're like, no, that's not correct. This is my
Yeah.
motivation, and then you
Wow.
go, oh, that makes sense. But that's not what's happening. So
I
it's very strange. Yeah, I don't know.
That reminds me of the whole conversation. I've done a lot of training in anti-racism and the difference between intent and
Mhm.
impact. Um,
Sure.
and in those spaces, I've gotten really frustrated with people who try to tell me what my intent is. And I say the only way you
Right.
can know what my intent is if you ask me and I tell you. Um, Now you
Right.
can tell
And we
me
can
the
be wrong about
impact
our own intent.
of my actions or decisions on you.
Yeah.
And that's something I absolutely have to take into account, because if my intent was something different than
Right.
impact, then and the impact was negative on you, then I need to take that into account.
Right. I think we can be lying to ourselves about our motivations. We can
Sure.
misunderstand our own motivations. Those things happen. But this is this particular example is a guy who will say, well, let's say I post something about immigration and he says, you're doing this because you want open borders and hate white people and are trying to
Mm,
commit white genocide. I'm like,
mhm.
well, that's weird. Like, I actually, that's not correct, But it's like, I
These
can
are
say pretty
sounding like talking
definitively.
points from somewhere else. Um,
Well, and that's part of what's happening, right? This
yeah.
is a person who has gotten wrapped up somehow into a really unhealthy mental space because of voices he's listening to
So I'm
that don't
curious.
allow him to interact and see me
Tell me about
with
when
clarity.
that happens. I'm
Mhm.
sure every single person who's listening right now, or who will be listening later on, will resonate on some level with that. And talk
Sure.
about when that weird thing happens. What's going on with your nervous system in that moment, and what's going on in your brain, and how does what you end up responding with, and maybe if you want to like jump into what's going on in your spirit in those moments.
Yeah. Well, it's a great question. I do think it. Why don't we do best case and worst case, right? Because there's a difference. It depends on the day, or maybe the time of the day, or whether I ate my lunch, or as far as how I
If you're
might be
hangry
feeling and
or not.
responding. Yeah, for
That,
sure.
I
I
mean,
mean, we
that's an
talk about
important
that.
thing to know, is like if you're just hungry and you can go eat before you respond.
We talk about that in my family, right? Like, there'll be times where one of us is really upset about something, and we're like, "Are you upset, like emotionally, or is this like a body thing?
Mm,
Like, do you
mhm,
need a snack? Do you need a nap? Do you
mhm,
need a? Are you feeling okay?" It can be that.
mhm,
It's not always, right? And sometimes that question can be offensive if it's not that. But yeah, so at my best, right, the whole reason I would be talking about something like this on social media, whatever the topic, is in the hopes of having a good
mhm,
conversation, in the hopes of helping someone to have an awareness of something, to grow in something, to see something from a new point of view. So at my best, I think when something like that happens, I see it as an opportunity to push deeper into a
mm,
conversation,
mhm,
to maybe learn where they're coming from and help them. It's like a pastoral thing,
mhm,
right? Okay, how do I help them see the thing they're not seeing? At my worst, certainly I can be offended, hurt, angry. Not that that's always inappropriate, but I can, something for me personally that can be an issue is very, I can be very quick witted and very unkind when I'm quick witted. So there is a chance that I might
mm,
try to hurt
mhm.
someone in a moment of hurt myself. And that's not
I
good.
am
And
never
I get some
quick-witted.
pleasure out of it.
I'm never quick-witted in the moment. I'm always quick-witted about 20 minutes later
I
with the
mean,
comeback.
on social media, you do have an advantage. You
Well,
can always
there's
come
that.
back 20 minutes later.
Pastor Mikkel, one of our campus pastors, writes this in the comments: "Halt! Am I hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? Those
Mm,
things influence how we experience
that's a great point.
disagreements." It's great. Like I like the halt. Like Ask yourself. Um,
I know.
maybe that should be. Maybe that
I
should have been
mean,
Paul's fruit of the Spirit is to halt.
I mean, the problem is the more hungry, angry, lonely, or tired I am, the less likely I am to stop and ask that question. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, it's
but
the
yeah.
double-edged sword of those.
I think I don't know if you experience this, Tom, but I do have times where I'll have been in a conversation on social media or in person, and later realize, why am I so sad
Mhm.
or angry or whatever, and try to trace it back to when it came in the day and realize it was from a pretty minor disagreement on
Yeah,
a social media
yeah,
post or something.
yeah.
And then it's like, okay, I was not in the right
Mhm.
headspace or heart space to be in that conversation,
Yeah.
apparently.
I have a conversation I started Saturday morning on Facebook about the SNAP benefits, and I
Hmm.
made the mistake of posting a question on the day that I was going to take like Saturday's my Sabbath, and then I
Oh,
came back Sunday morning this morning before worship without having like I try to like host these kind of conversations and help bring
yeah,
something like compelling out of
right,
it. And I was like, "Ooh, okay,
right.
this got away from me." Note to self: don't post it and then step away. Um, but one of them I remember, like I saw the very beginning of it, and it was from somebody that I hadn't seen in a long time,
Yeah,
and my nervous system went haywire. This was this morning
yeah,
before church. Another note to self: don't look back at your Facebook post before you go to
right
church as
before
a
you're
pastor.
about to.
But when I actually did read the whole thing, I was like, "Oh, I totally misinterpreted that first phrase. That was like the preview that I
Hmm.
could see, and just needed to." It was actually wonderful. It was really good. I'm hoping I haven't had a chance to check in today on that conversation yet, but we'll
Hmm.
see. I couldn't even get through it all. Hey, we're going to turn the corner here off of the weirdest conversation that
Okay.
disagreement you've had for a minute, and I feel a little sheepish asking you this because this was you and Kathy were going to be here together. Again, if you're just
Yeah.
tuning in, this was a Q&A with Matt and Kathy. We're not sure where Kathy's at. We're hoping that she is okay. Matt has reached out to her, and we're wondering if just the time change today kind of messed things up. But if she comes in, we'll jump in, and we'll have her join in. But I was curious if there were, as you worked through writing a book with Kathy,
Hmm.
and you surely have had this question asked before, or you guys have talked about it, but
Yeah.
there were maybe some topics that you guys weren't really like. There was too much disagreement, or maybe just something that for whatever reason, out of wisdom or your friendship or your, I don't know, or maybe a topic that she really
Yeah.
wanted, but you were like, if I go there, like that's gonna blow up this part of my life, and or vice versa.
Yeah.
Oh, you know
We.
what? Hey, hold on before you, because here is Kathy. She's
Oh.
just joining us.
Oh,
So
great.
let's get
I'm
her
so
in.
glad. I texted all my kids. There she is.
So sorry.
Hello,
Crazy day.
Hey,
Kathy.
Kathy.
Hold on. Here we go.
Kathy, I texted all the kids and said I'm supposed to be doing this interview with Kathy, but it looks like it's just going to be me. And they were all of them were like, "Oh no!"
Stop.
I felt sad for everyone that it was just going to be me.
Kathy, we're glad that you were able to be here with us,
Oh my goodness.
and we're glad that you're okay because we were a little concerned. Um,
No, it's this whole daylight savings, and we just got back from
That's what we figured.
Austin, Texas, like a couple hours ago. So
oh my gosh! So
Oh
you've
wow.
crossed over two, or I don't know. Have you crossed? Did you cross a time zone and then have the?
no, not really.
Okay. Well,
I'm just whatever.
what? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Totally.
let me. I already introduced Matt, and we're glad that you're here. Let me take a moment and introduce Kathy. And Kathy, you and I have done one of these before because we used another one of your book for a series a year or
Yes.
two ago. Raise Your Voice. I was trying to, I don't know if your personal library is organized well enough that you could just go find any book you want, but I couldn't find it. I know it's on my shelf somewhere. I wanted to be able to hold it up and say, "Hey, here's this other book she wrote." But Kathy is a writer, speaker, and advocate for justice, leadership, and the full inclusion of all people in the life of the church. She's the author of Raise Your Voice, Why We Stay Silent, and How to Speak Up, and a contributing editor to Sojourners. That book was really helpful for us. And also, I just really appreciated the Q&A that we had following that. You were a former campus minister, so you and Matt have this in common. You were both campus ministers, although in very different spaces, he and Crew and you in InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. You speak and write about race, gender, and faith from your home near Chicago. Love Chicago. It's probably my favorite big city. And you are a proud Korean American, an immigrant, a mother of 3, and by your own admission, someone who isn't afraid to talk about the hard stuff. I certainly get that feel when I read like your social media posts, and I don't think you're blogging as much, or maybe you have moved to Substack and I didn't follow you there, but I know on social media and what you used to do, it was you really like to dive into the hard stuff. And so Matt already gave us his answer, but this is just an icebreaker warm up. What's the weirdest disagreement that you've had lately?
Oh, weirdest. I don't know if it's weird. So I am now a fitness instructor. I teach yoga and last year or so picked up some other types of classes. And there has been quite a bit of conversation around whether or not politics has a place in yoga specifically and in fitness spaces. And it's tricky because you just don't know who's coming in and out of your classes. And there are lots of assumptions people might make about one another.
What does it look like, Kathy, to bring politics into yoga? Like you're like, okay, and this next
I was
position
curious
is
as well.
called
So like we're gonna do a downward
this
dog.
is the East
stick
White
your ass up
House.
at
We're just going to
President
knock
Trump.
off this part of your body. Like, what is it? Yeah.
So actually, there is a lot of conversations around what is spoken in Sanskrit and called out. And when I close out my yoga classes, I do not say namaste. I don't feel like that is a word that is mine, or it does not come natural to me.
Yeah.
And I have not used it since I started teaching about 7 years ago. And so I get a lot of questions around that. And for a time, and off and on, I will close my classes with a land acknowledgement. And specifically here where I live, we can document, there is documentation of which tribe owned the land.
Yeah.
I've used that, and that has popped up in reviews of the studio and of me. And yeah, and I'm grateful. I have a studio owner who has my back, and I have been approached by people who are like, why don't you end the class the way a yoga class is supposed to end? And so that is a conversation where you don't necessarily see a very clear through line to politics.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Like, please don't do a land acknowledgement. I want you to use the Sanskrit word instead.
Right. Right. So, it's.
I'm curious if there was a sense of it's sounding so familiar to church. It's just, but it's just yoga. It's just human beings getting together, trying to do meaningful things. And then wherever you're at, what you all are talking about, loving disagreement, it's going to pop up. Like, you can't run from it.
People try. People try, and I think it's happening in churches and in communities and families. I mean, there's a whole discussion around people going no contact with family members.
Sure.
What are the boundaries that are healthy around that, and what do we need to, where is that acceptable? And we had this in 2016, we had it in 2020, right? Hard things are happening politically or socially. And then it's, we're not going to talk about these 3 things. When we get together for Thanksgiving, we're not going to talk about these 3 things. Okay, great. But then how do we move the needle, or how do we understand one another without those conversations?
Right.
I don't know. Yeah, where Elise says, especially around the holidays. So this conversation is timely because we just started November and everybody's starting to think about Thanksgiving and Christmas and having all those loving disagreements or unloving disagreements, as the case may be. It reminds me of another podcast that I listened to or watched called The Necessary Conversation. I don't know if you're familiar with this. These two like grown adult kids with their two older parents.
Yeah.
And some of it, I don't know, I sometimes feel a little voyeuristic watching this because you're like, I can't believe that they're having these conversations online.
Yeah.
But they're all agreeing to do it. Like it's all consensual.
Right.
Nobody's like
Right.
forcing anybody, like mom and dad, to say crazy things. At least probably most of us who are watching this would say that. But you do get like this sense of like this raw honesty, sometimes very gritty. And they have said that they've had all kinds of questions about what are your family get-togethers like? And they've said that's actually been more joyful and harmonious because they've given themselves space in the podcast to have these crazy conversations. And then when they get together, they can just have fun.
Right. Oh.
I do think there's a piece of that. Like sometimes when you're getting together for Thanksgiving, it's people that you're literally seeing 3 times a year. And so when something comes up, you have relational responsibility, but not actual relational connection. And that can create some weird dynamics that you don't know how to navigate very well. It's like Uncle George was really nice to me when I was 12, and I just hate him now.
Yeah.
And like, how do I be respectful of our past and that he's my uncle? And also, like, do I have to listen to this while he's passing those mashed potatoes or whatever? You know?
Yeah. Let's hit a pause on that for just a moment, because Matt, you said something I think that it's really interesting, because it's just say that phrase again. You have relational responsibilities, but not necessarily relational connections, right?
Okay. That you're not consistently in relationship, but you're like, we're family.
Yeah.
Or you're married to my sister or my, whoever.
So presumably, if that's the yin, then you and Kathy are the yang of having relational connection, or I assume you do because you have a book that you've written. And we
would gladly have Thanksgiving together if that's the question.
We would, actually.
All right. And politics wouldn't be off the table for talking or disagreement. So what I'm curious about now, Kathy, this was what I was getting into right as you were coming on, and I was a little sheepish just talking about it with Matt. So I'm glad that you came on right as I was talking, asking this question. Was there a topic that just didn't work for you two to write about? Maybe, like if you wrote about it, it would blow up in Matt's life in some way, or vice versa, or that this one is too hot for the two of you, or was there anything like that as you two thought about this book?
I think there was more that there were specific fruit of the spirit that we didn't want to write about.
Okay.
To be honest, right? Like it was like, I do not want to write about patience. I don't want to, and so there was
wants to write about patience?
Nobody wants to write about patience.
Who got the short? I can't remember who got the short end of that straw.
I think I did patience, and then Kathy had to take self-control.
Okay. That was your trade-off.
It was a give and take.
Okay.
And so there was that kind of going back and forth in realizing that once we put things down into the book, that they would be there forever. And I think that is the difficulty, is that we may change, right? In the 2 years since the book has come out, a lot in the world has changed. And even when I think about the books that Matt and I have written in the past, right? So Raise Your Voice. Would I do things or write things differently? Yes. And other things that I would say no, like I'm still right there with it. Yeah. So I think that was a big concern. And then I don't know, Matt, if you had a chance to touch on it. I think there was even some conflict and kind of disagreement around approaching me to write in this project, and we touch on that a little bit in the book. And I think that is something we go back to often, because I think it is a dynamic we see constantly in the church, in our relationships, our families,
So
marriage.
remind people about that that dynamic of Matt.
Yeah. So
and Matt.
the publisher who I had worked with, the editor who was an editor that I love, that we both love, that I had worked with though, had come to me and asked about writing a book about civility, which I told her I wasn't particularly interested in, but that this
Yeah, your whole book is about like civility is too low of a bar.
oh, it was way too low of a bar,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I don't think it's a Christian value actually,
Mhm.
which is hilarious because there's a bunch of Christian books about it. Um, Yeah,
Yeah.
and they sell quite well, I'm told.
Hmm.
Uh,
A lot
I
anyway,
guess
better
I'm
than
not
our book.
shopping in the right Christian section because I haven't seen any of those books.
well, but it was floated like, man,
Okay.
if we could have you write this together with someone like Kathy Khang, that would be amazing. And I was thinking Kathy wouldn't want to, first of all, and so why even have this conversation? And I
Mhm.
was talking to one of our mutual friends, hilarious in retrospect, that instead of talking to Kathy, I was talking to a mutual friend about it and saying, yeah, I don't think I'm even going to mention it to Kathy. And he said, Kathy is a full grown adult who is capable of making decisions. Like, you don't have to make that decision for her. And I was like, oh,
Mm.
well, when you say it
Mhm.
that way, seems bad what I'm doing. And so I called Kathy,
Yeah.
and Kathy was like, "Yeah, I do want to do this."
Mhm.
And I was shocked, first of
Why
all.
did you think she didn't want to write it or wouldn't want to do this with you? I mean,
Well, I
I'm
mean, to be completely fair, Kathy had told
Right.
me she thought she might be done writing in this space. There was a lot
okay.
of stuff going on in each of our personal lives where we weren't necessarily looking for more book stuff right at the moment. So it wasn't a completely like out of
Mhm.
ignorance. It was like, I know Kathy pretty well. She has
Right.
told me some things, so I can
Mhm.
make this decision for her. Which it wasn't, that's not how I was saying it in my head, right? But when you put it, I mean, that is what was happening. So when you put it in
Right.
those
Right.
terms, suddenly you're like, oh, that seems bad, because it is
Yeah.
bad. And Kathy was great, like really kind about it, but also very straightforward of like, yeah, that was bad, Matt. You shouldn't do that. In the future, don't do that. Turns out I did want to write the book,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it goes back to a little bit of where we were going before Kathy joined of the difference between intent and impact.
Yeah,
And the impact
Yes.
right,
was that you were making a decision for her, which is a classic
right.
thing for a white dude to do,
Oh,
is to
totally.
make a
Incredibly
decision.
paternalistic and yeah, well-intentioned, trying to save Kathy a
Mhm.
conversation with some
Mhm.
people she probably
Right.
maybe doesn't want to talk to, like all this kind of
Mhm.
stuff. Taking it
Yeah.
off her plate for her.
I
Yeah.
love the
She didn't even
directness though,
ask me.
Kathy, of you back and the sort of whatever the trust is that you have for Matt to actually receive that. Or did he receive it well when you gave that back or
Oh yeah. 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 And there definitely was a moment of like, oh yeah, that's what happened. And and like he said, in all fairness, I had said things about like, yeah, I don't know about this Christian space anymore and all that kind of stuff. But I do think that ultimately that's what happened,
Mhm.
right? He made a decision for me. And though the intent was, now that we talk about, like, we keep talking about it, I think, oh, well, it also helped Matt avoid an awkward conversation, right?
Mhm.
Like, I could have been like, Matt, you know
Yeah,
me, like, I don't want to do
sure.
this. Why would you? Right. So there are
Mhm.
all these different possibilities. And I think that ultimately goes to why, in general, we avoid hard
Right.
conversations and avoid disagreement is because as much as we say, well, we don't want to make it awkward for the other person, I certainly don't want it to be awkward for
Mhm.
me. Right? Like, I don't want to have an awkward conversation where I'm rejected or told that I should know
Mhm.
better. So maybe it's just better to
Mhm.
like avoid it and in my mind say, oh, well, I'm doing so and so a favor. Um, and I would say I felt comfortable saying and being direct with Matt because of the
Mhm.
trust and the relationship that we
Mhm.
have. And not just that, but I know that he would come back to the table.
Yeah.
Right. So there wasn't a like, ooh, Kathy, that's not what
Mhm.
I was doing. But if he
Right.
had, I had enough trust to know that he would come back and be like, hey, can we talk about that again? Um,
Also, it was what I was doing.
and I don't
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yes.
I don't know whether
But
you ever read the New York Times advice columns. I love these things because it's like this level of advice column, and then my favorite part are the comment sections. And I've had a fun time playing in the comment sections lately of the New York Times advice columns. But the one that like they're asking the therapist, I mean, pretty much her answer every single week is be direct. Be direct. I mean, it's almost. I'll read it. I'll be like, okay, she's going to tell, like, just be direct with the person. And we have such a hard
Sure.
time being direct with each other. I mean, this isn't even about like politics or anything. Like,
Right.
this is just, we are so conflict avoidant as, I mean, I'm a Midwesterner, grew up in Indiana, live in Michigan now. I'm not particularly conflict avoidant. I've had to learn to be more so as a pastor because I hurt people with my directness.
Mhm.
But I don't is that conflict? Kathy, I don't get the sense that you're conflict avoidant. I don't know, Matt. Are you conflict avoidant before this? Was this a stretch for you? And Kathy, if I've misinterpreted you, please.
Kathy and I definitely have different approaches.
Yeah.
And I think it depends on the topic too, right? Like they're
Right. And the
in
audience.
and is it a family member, someone you're like deeply invested with, or a stranger? Are you angry on the topic? You know, like I think there's a lot of complexity depending on the thing.
Right. And I want to go back. So it's interesting. I would say like in the 90s and 2000s, when in campus ministry in our varsity, we were doing a lot of cross-cultural training and talking about conflict styles. And it always blew me away that folks would say, oh, well, Black culture and white culture is so much more direct than generally Asian and specifically Asian American culture. And I was like, are you kidding me? and because having grown up in the Midwest and growing up in a Korean American family and community, as a Korean American, I know how to read the indirect signals of my fellow Asian Americans, right? We have to learn how to code switch. However, that is not necessarily what I found white Christians being rather adept in, the code switching and the understanding of. And so what I found was white Christians were not direct at all. They were being civil. They were being Midwest nice. And it was like, can you just tell me what is going on? You're not going to hurt my feelings. This is wasting my time.
Yeah.
I grew up on the West Coast, and I was probably in my 20s when someone explained to me that if someone from the South says "bless your heart," that they're saying like that you're stupid or like there's a problem with you. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" I thought that was like I thought that was a legit blessing. Like people, oh, bless your heart, you're so cute, you know, or whatever. I had no idea. Yeah, culture.
I want to check in with you on time here. Are you all okay going a little bit longer till maybe 8:15 or so?
Totally.
Yes, because I feel so bad. I am so sorry.
I just wanted to know how much time I had left to get to some questions I want to ask. But I want to tell you about an experience I had. We just wrapped up the series last week. We didn't cover all of those the spirit, the fruit of the spirit. We just picked 4 of them, and we ended on gentleness. We're a multi-site, so there's a lead writer on the sermon each week, and I was the lead writer for gentleness. And then we preview to each other. So like I like to joke that we preach peer-reviewed sermons.
Nice. It's good science.
At least it goes through. Well, first of all, we're borrowing a lot of ideas from you two, and then we're adapting those, and then we're preaching them to the other 2 pastors, and they're giving us feedback, and then they adapt it for their space and so on. But I was the lead writer on gentleness to wrap up the whole thing. And
wait, so I just want to make sure I understand. So you don't like live cast it. Like you might write the first draft or a draft, and then each pastor kind of preaches from that and shapes it for their congregation?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. We kind of, you could think of preaching a little more like in terms of curriculum. Like I'm the curriculum writer for that week with the outline, and we all write a little bit differently. I write an outline. The other two pastors tend to write in manuscripts. And then one of us has like the official like video version or podcast version that we work with our videographer on. And then we will occasionally use, like most weeks, I use segments from the video because if I'm staying close to the outline, then I can use a segment of the sermon from the other pastor that video recorded it to get diverse voices on the stage. But it's not the whole sermon. It might be like a quarter of the sermon, or maybe, I don't know, occasionally I need a break and I just use the whole sermon because I'm a human being. Sure. All right. Anyway, that was a long get up to, I was the lead writer on the gentleness sermon. It had gone through like all of these revisions. On the last Sunday, we have our city elections coming up. And so I invited all the candidates for the city to come and be part of the church. And I recognized them, and it was a meet and greet afterwards. And I did a sort of a blessing of them in the service. But then the president of the Lansing City Council, who's not up for re-election, was my co-host that day. He's not part of our church. We have this weird thing. We stop in the middle of the sermon, we ask questions, people turn to each other, talk about it, and then I talk about the question with the co-host. So the Lansing City Lansing City Council president was my co-host that day. It's a way that I bring lots of voices up on the stage. I'm always trying to bring as many voices on the stage as possible. After the service was over, I was out at the meet and greet talking with the candidates, and one of the candidates, who's a woman, came up to me. And I know her. I am very sympathetic to her. I'm, I don't know if I was following Trump's now IRS can make endorsements, I might endorse her. This is not official endorsement of her. So this is somebody I really value. And she said to me, I've been talking about gentleness. She said, have you ever thought about the gender dynamics and gentleness? Mm-hmm. And I was like, how the hell did we get through that whole process with Kathy Khang in this chapter and not talk about being nice and the challenges that women have of being nice, and gentleness and the power dynamics in that? I couldn't believe that had somehow slipped through our whole like intentional process. And so I'm just curious, Kathy, if Matt, I think, was the lead writer on that chapter. Yeah. Did Matt just blow it and not like, but you also have like a moment to respond. Like, where's the nice challenge?
It's not all about gender, Tom.
I'll let Kathy fix you on that one, Matt.
That's our tradition.
So the audience and folks, for you, Tom, and the pastoral team going through the process, I think it's always a wonderful moment to go, like, we had the best of intentions, and here is this blind spot that we keep coming up against. Mm-hmm. It's definitely a conversation that is kind of like there for Matt and I. We have talked, when we did a live event at two different churches, we would have conversations about how we were going to approach that, how we would be mindful of the dynamic that we presented, mainly because the audience is expecting something, or their understanding of what a white man versus an Asian American woman is going to be like. So, in terms of the writing, I wouldn't say that there was a miss. I think there is definitely, it is that going back and forth that we made space for in all of the chapters, which was whoever's the lead writer on that Fruit of the Spirit gets to write the thing, our very rough draft, send it to the other person, and kind of respond to it. And I think that, looking back, I think we had a very good, like, going back and forth in the book, but not enough space. I mean, that could be a whole book. That could be a whole book.
Yeah.
Because what is expected on a live conversation or even online is very different. And the stereotypes are very live. And how people perceive me is so different, right? So I don't think that Matt and I are that different in the way we engage our various audiences. But even in the description, right, people are like, oh, Kathy, she does not hold back. I think it's because I'm an Asian American woman and I speak clearly and direct, and that is just not what is expected. And so the default is to emphasize what is unexpected.
Yeah. I wondered if my sort of frame or my bias in that, because I loved the gentleness thing. And I was not saying gentle and nice are not the same things, but I never said that.
Oh, yeah.
Gentle, like nice would be like, I don't want to make you uncomfortable. Like nice
Right.
was Matt was being nice to you about not asking you if you wanted to write this book.
Sure.
Yeah.
And he
You
needed
can do
to
really
not-
evil things and be nice.
Yeah.
And but gentleness would have been how Matt approached you,
Mm-hmm.
and how did he introduce that idea, like, and how did he bring it up, and those sorts of things. It's more the manner in which you go into the disagreement, or that's how I was thinking about it. And what was interesting, so the next thing that she said to me was, and I hadn't even noticed this, again, I couldn't believe that this got through our entire process and I hadn't noticed this. She said, but what I really liked was that every single one of your illustrations, I did a very, like, it's not just a book report, like where we're just telling people what you wrote from this chapter. It's more like it's inspired by what you've done. And I did this pedal design of the sermon where it was just one story of somebody being gentle after another, after another, after another. And so I used Desmond Doss, who's the first and only conscientious objector in World. I don't know if you've watched or seen the movie Hacksaw Ridge. He's like a pacifist. And then I used Mr. Rogers and his like standoff with Senator Pastor. And I used my photography professor, who is a man. And she's like, I love that all of your illustrations were men being gentle. And I was like, oh my gosh, I hadn't even thought that every single illustration was a man being gentle.
It actually goes to what you were just saying about the gendered expectations, right? Because if you took the mainstream American idea of masculinity and said, write down the top 10, like you just took average people on the street, what top 10 ideas of what a man should be, gentleness would very rarely rise to the top 10, right? It's not an expectation of men. It's a beautiful, wonderful thing that people like when they see gentlemen. But it's not what's typically thought of as. In fact, a lot of cultural values of masculinity for the majority, not the majority, for the for many Americans, are actually things that are the opposite of gentleness. You want a man who is strong enough to break things, not a man who is aware of how breakable things are, right? So I think, I think it makes sense that as you're giving examples of men being gentle, that is seen as gendered, because you're like, oh, I didn't expect that. 5 stories about men being gentle? That's crazy. How'd you get so many?
Yeah. I literally had not even noticed that every single one of my stories was of a man. I should say there's a little caveat. I did talk about Pastor Mikkel and how she helps me be gentle. But that was a very small part. Another one I used was, as a example, was the song Dear Theodosia with Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton. Like, why couldn't they be that gentle with each other? Like, they end up shooting each other or trying, like one shoots the other. Like, why couldn't they take that gentleness they had for their children and point it at each other rather than guns.
Well, and it's so fascinating because you've repeated it a couple times that you were surprised at how you did not see, all of the male examples and and yet I think that it is equally important to explain what we expect of women, because I think that what we expect of women is nice. And what is highlighted is being nice. And that is the model for women. And
how would you define what it means to be nice, or what's an example for you of being nice versus gentle?
Yeah, it's to listen and nod our heads and support. So even in this conversation, I mean, my inclination right now is to smile and nod my head, but really in my heart, it's to say, see, best of intentions. But at what point do you then change the way you do your sermon prep so that this far along, that never happens again, right? Yeah. And so that is what I mean. I think the niceness is to kind of smile and nod, but in a it is not expected of me as the guest on this to push back a little bit and challenge you, and to approach it in a way that is perceived as gentle, because it won't. It's not. That is why I have the reputation that I do, and that is why Matt's reputation is different. And yet we both feel very strongly about the things that we highlight. So I think that's the difference. What we tend to highlight in women's behavior, and particularly in kind of Christian faith spaces, I would say generally what I'm seeing highlighted isn't that women are being gentle. We're just being nice.
Yeah.
We're being nice. Yeah.
I was walking on the street in Portland this afternoon, and there was a family getting out of their van. And there was a little 7-year-old girl who was not paying attention, and she kind of was like dancing right in front of me as I was walking up. And her mom goes, "Alicia, pay attention, there's people walking," right? Which is, she's socializing her daughter, like, pay attention, there are people you need to be polite to, stay out of their way, there is a man coming. Maybe she's worried about getting her run over or hurt, right? But this is not gentleness being shown anywhere here. This is she's moving her daughter toward politeness, or trying to, while also potentially like, why are you mad at a kid? Why are you speaking to them that way? Which is not my business, right? But I just turned and looked at the little girl and I said, "You're fine. I saw you. Everything's okay." That's gentleness from me. And I was actually I mean, Kathy will tell you I'm a little over tender-hearted probably, but I was like, "God, poor kid. I hope they're not like worried about that. Like, it's okay. Dance in the middle of the sidewalk is fine. In Portland, for crying out loud." But yeah, I don't know. And I might have been showing some prejudice too, because it was a little family of 5 that had all done their hair, even though there was a 2-month-old. I'm like, they probably all need to loosen up a little. But
I want to turn the corner here and get to a topic that wasn't in your book, and I was kind of surprised that it wasn't actually.
Is it Snap?
No, you can go to my Facebook page and join in that conversation, and you can argue with my relatives who have different last names.
I love that. Love arguing with people's relatives.
One of the things I do in these comments is I introduce people to each other. Like, nobody ever does that. Like in social media, I'm like, let me tell you who this person is to me.
Yes,
like, you can keep arguing, but this is my mom, or this is my brother, or this is my uncle, or like,
happens
and this
all
is
the
a
time.
member of my church. And
people are like fighting with Kathy and like quoting Bible verses at her, and I'm like, she was a minister for 20 plus years. What are you
It's
doing?
okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
fun.
anyway, yeah, you're welcome to come and join my Facebook conversation on Snap. But I was curious about the conversation around gender and sexuality.
Mhm,
And Matt had asked me ahead of time,
mhm.
as he was looking through this, of where our church is at and the
Yeah.
audience you're speaking to. And actually, before we go any further, I see Ben has put a couple questions that he wants to ask in the chat. And so if you would like to ask a question, that's what I'm going to queue up next, are questions that those who are watching want to ask. But wow, like what if you want to talk about, like, I don't know, immigration also is a huge thing right now.
So easy.
Like but I'm curious about why that wasn't in the book, how you two have approached that. And just so you know, like, Sycamore Creek's a United Methodist Church. We're a newer church. We don't wear our sort of denominational affiliation on our sleeve. We were glad when the denomination finally caught up to where we were at, which is to let us ordain, or to let us marry gay people, and
Mhm.
to allow us to recommend people for ordination.
Yeah.
And we're also sometimes I feel like we're a sort of bait and switch church, but we're a bait and switch the other way, because we look non-denominational evangelical. Like, we have a lot of we're not mega churches, but we have a very informal, kind of heavy graphics, sort of TED Talk. Like, we don't use like the lectionary and all that stuff. So you can show up at our church and be there, like, and we're meeting, like, we're doing like felt needs and affinities and all that sort of thing. But then all of a sudden, like, here we are talking about gender and sexuality and inclusion. And it was like, oh, that's not what I expected from this format, or from this forum. I thought you all were something that you're not. So, but so we end up with, I sometimes refer to it as the gay evangelical diaspora in Lansing. So these are like people who come out in mega churches, and then, or the pastor at a mega church will preach the sermon, and they're like, I can't be here anymore. And then if they haven't thrown the church off completely, like at that point, because a lot of them just walk away and don't ever come back, but they still want a faith community and they go looking for one. There's a lot of inclusive traditional churches in Lansing that like follow the lectionary and use liturgy and so on. And that doesn't fit for them because they grew up in mega church evangelical non-denominational forms, and they generally end up at Sycamore Creek. Like, that's where we're like the only contemporary, modern, informal, I don't know exactly what the right word is, non-liturgical affirming church in the Lansing space that I'm aware of. So that's who you're talking to for the most part. But we have 3 campuses. One's very much in the city, one sort of city, suburb, college, and one is very rural, small town rural. But all 3 of them are welcoming and affirming of gay people, and we talk about it on a regular basis. So I was curious you didn't get into that in the book, and I was wondering if you could unpack that a little bit for us, and how that conversation plays out in your different spaces.
It could have been a whole book. I mean, there are some limitations when you're trying to do some sort of exposition around a passage, which is what we were trying to do, and then go deep into a particular issue and conversation. I believe we kind of do a hand wave around
in a footnote or something.
Yeah, somewhere.
It is the number one question we get from communities that have us come in to speak with them, is like, this is the topic we're really wrestling with as a community. Help.
We're not wrestling with it.
Right. Well, so that's interesting, right? I mean, I think the other thing that is true is that we tend to think of different types of churches as being monolithic, and it's not true. Just like the LGBT community is not monolithic. There are transphobic lesbians. There are gay people who don't think people should be gay. There are, there's so much diversity,
Mhm.
even within theologically similar churches and movements. And I think sometimes we don't see those disagreements because we make some assumptions about where everyone is.
Mhm.
Um, I guess we could say this. So Kathy and I are both affirming, and have been for quite a while, like a ways back. And our publisher, Nav Press, is it's the publishing arm of the Navigators Ministry, which is a ministry which is not affirming. So when they asked us if we would write this
Yes.
book, we had a phone call with our editor and with the publisher, and we said to them, this is a topic that we believe strongly about. We're both affirming. It is not the point of the book, but you need to know that that's who we are. And if that's not okay, we totally get it and will not
Mhm.
write this book, which was an interesting conversation. I think a good
Mhm.
conversation.
Yeah.
And they basically said, yeah, that's fine. We talked about it. I mean, it was probably an hour-long call.
Mhm.
But we're pretty upfront about that from the beginning. And what we haven't, well, I should probably mention this. So the point of the book was never, let's talk about all the things that we do disagree on and how do we get
Right.
to agreement, right? It was more, how do we prepare our hearts to enter in a godly way and to be spirit infused? So we're having conversations that are difficult because right now it's LGBT stuff. And 20 years from now, hopefully it's going to be something else, right?
AI phobic.
Oh,
That's the whole, I
man.
don't know if you've seen those trends of
I'd
videos.
be glad to fight with people about AI stuff right now. I have so
Like,
many strong feelings.
well, it's the
Um,
funny thing is like it's like younger Gen Z or Gen Alpha like making videos about how they think they're so welcoming right now, but then when their kids come home with an AI like robot, they're gonna be like, no, you don't mix like AI,
Oh, well.
robots, and humans. Like you keep them separate. And it's interesting. I mean, it's always sort of humorous, but it's an interesting way that they're engaging a kind of self-reflection on where their own edges might be.
Oh, my kids hate AI. They hate it.
Yeah.
um, to a dramatic degree. Yeah, all of which to say that it's an incredibly important topic, probably, in my opinion, one of the top 3 topics that the Christian church is wrestling through right now, and largely doing a pretty bad job of, us as a larger community, I'm saying. Because I don't think, if we look at the description of Scripture of how Christians lovingly disagree, I think we're largely not doing it on this topic. And a lot of people are doing really harmful, horrific things to each other.
I want to go back and dig in, and Kathy, feel free to jump in. That conversation you had with Nav Press,
Yeah.
that's really intriguing to me.
Mhm.
Kathy, what was that experience like from your perspective?
So a little bit of background. I know the publisher for Nav Press because he used to work for InterVarsity Press. So even though we didn't have a working relationship, I knew of him, and he knew of me and my writing and who I am. So I wasn't all that worried about the conversation. It was more of the outcome. It was, how does Nav Press feel about having 2 authors who are affirming write a book about loving disagreement? Because not all publishers would be okay with that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Not all evangelical publishers would be okay publishing the writing of anyone who is publicly affirming.
So I have had that conversation in other spaces. I inhabit a lot of church planting spaces.
Okay.
And church planting spaces are pretty heavily evangelical.
Yes.
And I will just say, hey, this is who I am. And if that's not what you want, like if you don't want me here, that's fine. Like
Right.
just tell me up front so we don't get into this and build a bunch of like relationships and then you kick me out later. But so if you're gonna kick me out, just kick me out now. And I've had it in many spaces. People are like in those spaces, they said, no, we want you to be here. I had one that said yes, and then later they changed their mind.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that was really hard. That was
Yep.
really hard. That was the
Yep.
hardest one. When they say, no, it's not going to work
Yeah.
right up front, I'm like, okay, like,
Right.
let's, this is like, what is it? Abraham and Lot. Like, you go over here, go
Yeah.
over here. Maybe someday, like the Methodist split, we'll come back and say slavery was a bad idea. Bishops shouldn't have been slave owners.
Yeah.
And then maybe one day we'll join with the EUB. And I'm starting doing a lot of Methodist talk and say,
No, we know.
the segregated conference we did to lubricate the merger of the South and the North in the 38 was a bad idea, or 39. Let's get rid of that too and become United Methodist. Which I don't know. Even when I say that, though, that's saying it from the perspective of a kind of, it's easy for me because the boot is not on my neck.
Right.
To like have that patience.
Yeah.
It's okay for the patience over a period of time.
Yeah.
By the way, my wife, I don't know if Kathy knows. I know my wife knows Matt.
Yeah.
I'm very familiar with these conversations.
Right.
That happen over our dinner table about who you can publish with and who you are and what podcast they want you on and all that kind of stuff.
The dirty secret of Christian publishing, and this is true in Christian music publishing as well, is that there are a lot of people who are affirming, who are authors or musicians, but they're not publicly affirming. There are people you would be very surprised to know that this big romance author actually is like, yeah, I wish I could write a gay romance. And that's, publishers know this, but it's financial for a lot of them.
Well, it's like
a financial decision.
Gay musicians forever, just don't be gay, like publicly or out.
Right. And it creates it does a lot of damage. And we've seen that in some pretty high profile things recently in the music industry. And this again is an example of, as Kathy was mentioning earlier, right? This is not people entering into healthy, loving disagreement. This is people being nice and hiding things under, let's all make sure we can still be in the same room together and keep working together and keep putting out your books and your albums and make money together.
Yep.
Just don't mention any of this stuff, please.
Yeah. But you all both came in and you said, this is who we are.
Yep.
This is what we believe.
We're never going to stop saying what we think about. We're both ministers at heart. We're never going to stop saying what we think is best for people or for the church to make money off a book.
Yeah.
It's not who we are.
Yeah.
Shout out for my wife who's listening in the other room. She's loving this publishing conversation.
Hi, Sarah.
So, all right, I got to get to, I've got two questions. They're from the same person. So I'm going to, let's see. Just want to be respectful of everybody's time here. I'm going to put both of them up. I'll put and let you see them. And if you want to answer, let's say, well,
we do want to answer.
We'll just see where we're at. Ben asks, Ben actually is in Chicago now. So Ben, meet Kathy. Kathy, meet Ben. Ben was part of our church until he decided to move to Chicago.
The Kathy question.
But he found a good church, Urban Village. So how do you practically practice joy in a painful conflict when it feels inauthentic or you just feel angry? So I don't think we did a sermon on the chapter on joy. So and then Ben also asks this question. What do you do when the other person argues in bad faith and just wants to win? Maybe that was related to the weird debate you were having.
No, that's a good question. It's a great question.
Does the call to use the fruit of the Spirit still apply? I feel like I don't know. I live too much on Instagram, and I have a reel to answer both of these questions that Ben I will share with you later on. But either of you want to?
Yeah, let's talk about
joy or bad faith.
The first one, Kathy, is particularly your specialty.
Yeah. So
back up on the screen.
Yeah. So joy, I do think that, again, it's not something that I've heard very many sermons on over the decades of listening and hearing sermons preached, and I particularly here in the West, in the United States, we are more concerned with being happy than we are understanding what it means to be joyful, and that you can be very angry and still be able to be joyful in the midst of the pain. And again, I think it's the false binaries that we make. We try to live by because I think it's easier that way, or we think it's easier. So, how do I practically practice joy? I am not particularly happy about what's going on in the world, and particularly in my neighboring communities. So, for example, ICE has shown up at a high school parking lot, a high school that is about 15 minutes away. I am not happy. I'm very angry about it. And yet, there is a sense still that I have to remind myself as a believer and one who trusts in God and believes that ultimately God's Spirit, the Holy Spirit, is still moving in people. Holy Spirit is still working, hopefully, in me. That is the joy that I hold on to. That it isn't a circumstance that necessarily I can control. So while we are driving back home from the airport, we are marveling at the changing of the colors here in the Midwest, and it looks like we're close to peak. And just being amazed and holding that moment of joy, that kind of sense of awe that God is still doing this amazing work that I have nothing to do with, and still be able to be angry and ask God, what is it that you're inviting me into that I actually can take action in?
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about joy and awe
Yeah.
as parallel, or I don't know, maybe they, is it the same thing? But I don't know, this is gonna go into some weird niche space, but I did a whole training with Adrian von Kamm, who integrates modern psycho. He's a Dutch priest, Catholic priest, and he's also a psychologist, and he tried to integrate the two, and he put awe as the foundational thing in our lives. And that's really interesting. Awe and anger feel like they fit better to me together than joy and anger, because I feel like I think joy and awe are probably more the same thing than joy and happiness, but joy and happiness have gotten so related or tied together that it's hard to pull them apart in an American Western culture view of it. But awe and joy, if you think of joy as awe, I think those awe and anger kind of fit together a little better.
Yeah, and like you said, I think it's a very kind of American Western white way of looking at things, that happiness is the ultimate goal. And I think of what I've learned from my immigrant community, which is there is not a lot to be happy about. The journey that they took, the experience that they have, and now what we are living through in the current time. And yet how I have been taught to approach life in general is, there's always going to be suffering, which is very scriptural. There's always going to be suffering that you just have to deal with and acknowledge, but there's something beyond that sustains us. And I think, again, we forget how young of a country the United States as a nation is, and that, what's happening now is we're trying to erase all the things that are uncomfortable to us, right? So that we can be happy about our history. So again, we've just erased that sense of joy. And so, those of you who follow me, and if you haven't, you can join me on Instagram every September, which is my birthday month. I try to celebrate for myself that month. And a lot of it has to is around, like, what are the small things I'm noticing in this month that I have gotten another year to live that makes me pause. It's the one flower that decided to bloom out of all of
Yeah,
the things that I planted, right? So that, I think, Ben, is how I cling to both anger, which is not something to be afraid of, but I think is something that we need to wrestle with and ask God about. Why are we angry? To approach anger and joy with curiosity. And I think that's where awe comes into both spaces, which is we're not a very curious people. And I think the way our Christianity is often practiced is in our heads. So we have to know and we have to be right. And that eliminates the space to be surprised and be in awe.
I'm gonna be pondering awe and anger for a while here. Thank you for making that connection. Ben had asked a second question about people arguing bad faith, but I'm gonna Elise has asked one more question. Let this be the last one, and I think they kind of tie together. But it's like, what's your most tedious disagreement? Somebody keeps coming back up when they're slow to change. And what's your biggest tip for patience? Who got the patience chapter? I can't remember.
I think that was me.
That was you. Okay.
Yeah, listen, I would say, and connected, it is connected, Ben, I think, to what you were asking as well, which is, are we responsible to, in difficult conversations sometimes, or someone's just trying to win an argument, or like, do we have to use, does the call to use the fruit of the Spirit still apply? And yeah, it does. That's the thing. And Kathy and I hate it. We were writing this book and we got in a big fight that not with each other, but with someone else in the publishing world, not even our publisher. And it was brutal. It was so bad. It was wrong. It was unfair. It was unkind. It was all these things. And we were like, we just wrote this book about what we're supposed to do. And I guess we have to live by it. Because the fruit of the Spirit, at the end of the day, is not a thing we perform. It is a thing that becomes true in us as we become more like the Holy Spirit and more like Christ. As the Holy Spirit works in us, we become more kind. We become more patient, all these things. So, Elise, with your question, tedious disagreements. My initial thought is, for most of us, our most tedious disagreements, our most difficult things where there's slow change is almost always in our families. That there is this one thing that if I could just get this one person to like grow in this thing, maybe it's your kid, maybe it's your grandparent, doesn't matter. It's like, how do we get them there? And I think what's beautiful about patience in this context is that for many, not always, and it's not always right to do this, but for most of us, our default assumption about family, well, that's not even true. Family often, for some of us, is seen as a permanent relationship, right? I'm always going to be connected to my child. But as Kathy was mentioning earlier, there are many people who are finding it healthy and good to get breaks from their parents or their children. But the point is this. In patience, what we're saying is, I look at my life and I see Matt of 10 years ago and Matt of today are two different human beings. And in many ways, I hope the Matt of today is a better person than of 10 years ago. And patience says, this person that I love, that I care about, that I'm in this tedious disagreement with, I believe that it is possible that there could be a future in which God might allow them to have transformation on this topic. And I think we actually see this a lot. And actually the question about joy, we see this a lot in the Black church. The African-American church has given us so many good examples of how to be patient in times of injustice. I think of the I Have a Dream speech, Martin Luther King's famous speech, is a patient speech in so many ways. I have a dream that one day justice will come. That all these things we've been promised in Scripture thousands of years ago, that justice will roll down like a mighty river, right? That my dream is that it's still coming. And that's part of patience, is this belief that good things may be coming. And if they don't come, that this relationship is still valuable and beautiful and something worth being a part of. And of course, that's setting aside things about abuse and other issues. That's
Right.
another topic that is important.
Yeah.
But if you're in a relationship that is not a piece of it, to be able to, slow to change is not the same as unchanging, right? And
How
so,
long, I'm curious. I mean, when I engage this sort of question, I often tell people my change from non-affirming evangelical conservative fundamentalism, where I grew up, to affirming inclusive place that I'm at, took the pace of decades
yeah,
and
sure,
hundreds of conversations.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we want the change to happen at the pace of conversations.
Right.
How long was that process? I mean, maybe you both came from places, but my sense is that you didn't. That was affirming. What was the length of time for that for you?
Hmm. This may be common with kind of change that comes over time. I don't know that I can pinpoint the exact moment. That it wasn't a eureka aha. It was like one day realizing, oh yeah, this is where I am. You know. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I
I
guess I'm
became a
not trying to
believer
get you
when
to
I was.
pinpoint a time. I'm like, did that process take 10 years, like you just said? Like like how far do you have to go back where you're like,
So
oh yeah, that's
complicated, right? Because my initial thoughts on this topic were indoctrinated into me
Mhm.
Mm.
when I was a child, and then continually re-indoctrinated in the religious communities I was a part of and that I
Mhm.
served in. And so it really was a question of transformation away from indoctrination and toward uh, an acceptance of what the Holy Spirit was already speaking to me through my community, as well as through scripture and through prayer and all these other things. And it did take a long time. Yeah, it was definitely
Yeah.
more than a decade. I think that's fair to say, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
And
was when
I
I first started at Sycamore Creek 16 years ago, I was not affirming, and I
Yeah.
am today. So it's at least a 16-year. I mean, it was, but even the process goes before I was a
Oh
first pastor.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can be very clear and say when I joined staff with InterVarsity, I was not affirming, and a few years prior to my leaving staff, um, I was affirming and really
Yeah.
wrestling with how do I stay in an organization that
Mhm.
is having a conversation around
Mhm.
human
Yeah.
sexuality that
Mhm.
I I don't want to have anymore.
Yeah.
Not in
How
that
long was that,
context.
Kathy? How long were you on staff there?
I was on staff for 20 some years.
Okay.
Yeah.
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 So
So
I
maybe
would
at least
say,
be patient with your own development of patience.
yeah.
I think
Yeah.
too, like even going back to what Ben was saying, there are a lot of people trying to win the argument of
Yeah.
how gay people should interact in the church. And some of them have no skin in the game in the sense that it's purely a theological construct for
Yeah.
them.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think when you're in that conversation, I look back at myself and my own growth, and I'm like, okay, there were these moments. I can't say when exactly it happened, but I do remember speaking at a student event and this student coming up to me afterwards and saying, "You say God loves everyone. Does he love me?" And I said, "Yeah." And then he pulled back his shirt sleeve to show me that he had like LGBT bracelets on. He goes, "Now do you think God loves me?" And I was like,
Mm.
"Yeah, of course." But it
Mhm.
was this moment that I was like, "Oh, that kid doesn't know. He doesn't know that my
Mm.
community thinks that he is loved." And I started looking
Mhm.
around and going, maybe it's because my community actually doesn't love him.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
I, I mean, I can be naive, but that was one of those moments where I was like, oh, a bunch of people in my community don't love gay
Yeah.
people, but they keep saying
Mhm.
they do, but they actually hate them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Um,
Matt, if people
uh,
want to keep up with you after this, how do they find you?
if you can spell my name, which is a lot to ask, you can find me. Anyone with the name Mikalatos is directly related to me and can put you in touch. But yeah, I'm on most of these social media sites, but Facebook is probably where I am most
Mhm.
consistently because I'm an
Yeah.
old man. But yeah, you can reach out to me on the other ones as well.
I want to just give a shout out to Matt's Facebook. Like you tell stories of immigrants right now who are being taken, who do not fit the profile of criminal anywhere near it, and those are worth. My wife shares them a lot, and so then I see them not through you, but through her.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't shared much lately because I have a bunch of offline writing I've been doing, but it's a great example actually of what we we're just talking about too, in the sense that why am I telling these stories? Well, I'm not trying to convince anyone of anything. I'm trying to make them feel something.
Yeah.
And allowing their emotion and
Mhm.
to be transformative, and the Holy Spirit, I hope, as well.
Yeah. Kathy, if people want to stay connected to you, where can they do that?
So I'm primarily living on Instagram these days, which is funny, Matt, because I think aren't I older than you, old man? And you're on
Yeah,
Facebook.
you're older, but much more cool.
I don't know. Cool. Yeah, so I'm
Rad?
on
More
Instagram
rad.
mostly. More rad. I don't think anybody uses those words anymore.
Yeah, that's like
West
Gen X
Coast.
brain rot right there.
I'm
Oh,
on the West
goodness.
Coast.
Yeah, so I'm mostly on Instagram. You can find me there. But I have the same handle on where else? Threads and TikTok. Yeah.
Well, that definitely makes you cool, and younger than Matt or
Yeah.
me technologically.
That's right.
Thank you so much, the two of you, for joining. And if you're out there watching still or listening, would you just put a greeting of gratitude in the comments there? And if you are unable to watch this whole thing, it'll be available on all of our channels. I always end Sunday morning. Our three core values at Sycamore Creek are to be curious, creative, and compassionate. And so that's my final benediction in all of those places. So until we meet again, be curious, be creative, be compassionate, and peace.